Kyle, I'm starting to feel like I really miss Michael.
This is Auto Collabs.
It's a little sad to me, you know?
I mean, I know he's
Like,
coming home. He'll be here soon.
there's a whole reason why it's called Auto
I
Collabs.
know
'Cause
you
it's
and
a
I
collab
do
with
this
all
all the
three of
time on a
us.
bunch of other stuff, but
I
Michael,
know.
I mean, like, who's going to make dumb jokes at the right moment? Who's going to ask deep questions at the right moment if
Who's
it's not you
who's
or
gonna
me?
be short at all the moments, you know? That's really what I'm wondering out
Nailed
here.
it. There you go.
Nailed
That's
it.
what you get, Cirilla. We're gonna cut this out, tag you in a social post, and then you're gonna find out and not be surprised what goes on when you're
Got
not
it.
around. But today I'm excited for our guest today because
Always.
can we call him an old friend? He's younger than me,
Yeah.
maybe. But now I start to feel like Greg Uland with Reynolds is like we got an energy going now. So now when he shows up, you don't
Absolutely.
have to do all the pleasantries. We can get right to business.
Get right to business. He's a co-content creator. He is diligent with the way that he works within the Reynolds organization and understands everything that that organization has the capacity for, the data around it, the product sets. Like, he's not just, I think he's the vice president of marketing. He's not just a marketer. He is like a
No.
through and through participant in the operations of the business. So I
That's
always love
that
having this
makes the best
conversation.
marketers, right? They
Absolutely. Yep.
understand operations and they have like you say it. Marketing is like the heart of the business, like whatever it is.
Yep.
You say it more eloquently, but that's like they have to be connected to all the different extremities of the business. And Reynolds has a couple different I mean, like, we're not just talking about arms and legs. Like, this is like a centipede.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
They're in everything. They're printing check. Like, there's all the things he talks about last time.
Right.
Either way, we hope you enjoy this next chapter of our conversations with Greg Uland.
Hey, we're already laughing here with Greg over at Reynolds. And man, it's just always a pleasure to hang out with you. You've always got insights and laughs and goofy things to chat with us. So welcome to another episode of Auto Collabs, man.
Appreciate it. I hope it's not too goofy today.
Oh, well, I'm all in on the goofy, but we're gonna get right down to it because a lot of times on Auto Collabs we go through a little bit of story, and we've heard your story before. Actually, this is random. My father-in-law is actually here right now. In the 90s, my father-in-law was the agency of record for Reynolds.
Really?
No way.
Yeah. So yeah, he has an agency out of Cincinnati and was like the agency of record for all of Reynolds.
Hang on, when was that? Like, what part of the 90s?
Like mid to late 90s it would have been.
So oh man.
I think the company was named Sunrise at that point.
Okay.
I don't know if I can't remember when you started, but
I started
yeah,
in
he did.
08 I started.
Yep.
But
yeah, so it was right. Yeah, so it would have been, it was like 95 to 98 or 99 or something like that. So I don't know like exactly what the outputs were, but yeah, so I had
awesome.
no clue that I had that much like family history with Reynolds.
So 99 was actually, last year at NADA, so not 24, but 23 at NADA. We launched our new logo and kind of, got on this track that we're on right now. And, went through a lot of history with the company leading up to that. And 99 was the time prior to last year that we had kind of created a new logo. And so I wonder if there was some transition there where your father-in-law, like we were like, I probably have stuff in my office here with examples of, how we launched. It was when we launched our first website, and it was when we had a new logo. And so there's a lot of stuff. So there might be some meat that we can at least get.
He's literally right outside this door right now. We could go grab him. We'll talk through the whole history real quick. He's watching Harry Potter with my.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, we can't do that. We have a report to talk about. We have data to talk about. We have dealers to help out.
That's right.
Like this study that, I'm looking over some bullet points, and Kyle and I were reviewing it. It seems like some very actionable information for dealers to take, especially as it pertains to Conquest. Everyone's trying to figure out where they're going to get this. Like, we're back to playing the ground game, as an industry, right? There's no more it's going to come in, and everybody knows that. We've been talking about it for the better part of 9 months now. So why don't you walk us through a little bit about what this data is and like how it can really inform some dealers' decisions specifically around Conquest?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for quite a few years now, but basically we look at over the calendar year every trade-in across the U.S. So it's transactional data, DMS data. So every trade-in across the U.S. and then what vehicle was purchased on that trade-in. So it's a pretty broad set of data, but there's some really interesting things. It seems that always stand out, and every report that's similar to this has kind of similar numbers. But I love that this is true transactional data, so you can really dig into it and you can look at it by geography, and there's all kinds of nuance to it. But so retention across the U.S. across all brands is a staggering 43.7%. So it's crazy how 6 out of 10 people aren't going to drive the same make of vehicle that they're in today.
Wow.
And that's something that the dealership can't control, right? The retailer the retailer isn't convincing someone to drive a Ford or drive a Chevy or drive a Honda, right? They're convincing them to buy from them. So the cards are kind of stacked against us in a lot of ways, just because there's
and I mean that's
brand
loyal. That's not dealer loyal.
Right.
So you probably see even a low, and it could be brand loyal to used, brand loyal to new. So that's like overall brand to brand loyalty, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a wild thing. Actually, there was a lot of conversation as we went through COVID about declining loyalty, right? So looking at, it looks like actually loyalty, I think over the last year has come up a couple percentages. So that's a change, from the middle of the pandemic when it was basically buy whatever inventory is available. So we're seeing loyalty return a little bit, which is an interesting pattern to pay attention to. But it's still, when you look at like, hey, only 4 out of 10 people actually buying the same brand. It takes a lot of work when that's not even dealer loyal to figure out how to keep, especially for new franchises, keep people in the brand, which is, I think, like it's a massive opportunity for dealers to figure out how to leverage marketing to move people back into their brand, and not just the brand, but to the dealership.
Right. And I think it lends itself also when you think about even after sales, right? And you think about where that relationship lies, because at the end of the day, brand retention is really going to be about your experience with the car, right? You buy it initially because it speaks to you a little bit, right? For some reason or another, you want to be in that car. It's in a lot of ways a reflection of who you are. But then over the next 2, 3, 5, 6 years, whatever it is that you own that car, you're gonna experience it, right? And the way that you experience that car is going to determine whether or not you come back and buy that same car again or that same make again. And that's where you're going to have more touch points as a dealer. Again, you're not going to completely influence whether or not they're going to buy another Toyota, but you can certainly have some level of impact in that after sales experience. We focus a lot on the sales experience, which is great, and we should. But we also need to focus on that ownership experience, the full ownership experience, and not just the transactions and the touch points that we get, every year in the dealership.
You mentioned ownership experience. One of the data points in the report, basically the note is that premium brands are conquesting Ford and Toyota drivers at surprisingly high rates.
Yeah.
Right. When I think ownership experience and you think of premium brands, you think like that's what they zero in on more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at those, you think a premium brand, and we kind of break it out into different segments in premium even, but when you look at those, you would think, all right, they're probably conquesting a majority of customers from other premium brands, right? There's
each other. Yep.
Yeah, Mercedes and BMW, and they should be conquesting from each other. But when you really break it down, you can kind of go brand by brand. Ford and GM are, and part of it's market share, right? They're large market share players, so there's more opportunities out there. But they're not bouncing. Buyers aren't bouncing so much between the exact same segment. A lot are actually pulling up into those premium segments.
So I'm looking at some of the other points. Truck owners, it seems like they're still being truck owners. 72.5% likelihood of purchasing another truck.
Yeah, so that one's interesting because it's a unique segment, right? Trucks. If you buy a truck, you have a reason to buy a truck, right? And you're probably going to buy another truck. But what was the most interesting to me, and it kind of has been doing this for the last couple of years, but it's accelerated this year, is the actual brand loyalty inside of those truck buyers, inside of that truck segment, has gone down pretty dramatically. So GM trucks are the only brand that keep over 50% of their drivers. So even, the dominant Ford, right? If you're in
wow, that's really interesting. GMC.
Yep.
Yeah, because Ford historically, like you think about just extreme loyalty, but there's clearly pressure in the market from other brands changing the way that the loyalty happens. Obviously, there's a lot of homogeny across trucks, I feel.
Yep.
And so, you get that change. It's a dramatic stat in my opinion when you've got 72% likely to purchase another truck, but the likelihood of them not purchasing another truck from you is like lower as a delta. I feel like that's like, especially for a domestic dealer to really zero in on that segment and figure out how to retain that customer is probably a high likelihood if the communication pattern, if the after sales pattern is really strong, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you retain that customer? But so Ford as an example, right? So 40, let me look at it so I don't get it wrong. 47% is Ford's retention number. So if you're in a Ford truck, right? F-150 or a Ranger, it's grouped together. So Ford truck, if you're in a Ford truck, 47% of the people that trade those in are going to buy another Ford truck. So you look at that and you go, okay, if I'm a Ford dealer, it might be a good idea to not be scared of selling some Chevy trucks, right? Like they're going to buy a truck.
Right.
So how do I stock
Right.
appropriately to make sure that I keep that customer? Forget about the vehicle for a second. Like, how do I keep the customer? So you can really use this as a
Man, that's
stocking
oh yeah.
strategy.
So like to put that together in case you missed it,
How do you stock
right?
the used cars that are right for the conquesting?
If
Golly.
right, because if
Great
72% of the truck buyers are buying another truck and only 47% of them are buying a Ford truck, like coming back to Ford, that the difference, it's almost 30% of those buyers are going to buy a different brand truck. So you're saying like you better have the different brand trucks on your lot so that you can keep the buyer, even though they're not going to be brand loyal to Ford.
Yeah, and I think that
Well, and that's the same thing with the Ford and Toyota buyers defecting more to premium brands. It's like, hey, maybe you need to have those, late model year premium brands in your used car inventory as a comparison. Like that's a stocking strategy right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you look at used vehicles too. I mean, I think this year we're going to see a pretty decent importance put on used vehicles across retailers. When you look at some of the numbers, I was looking at this earlier this week, I think it was. But when you look at actual vehicle sales and you look at combined sales, so new sales, we kind of know what those look like. Used sales, some of us pay attention, but when you look at the combined number, last year, so 2023 had the lowest number of combined sales since 2012. So just over 51 million.
Man.
So when you look at that, you got to imagine that we're probably not going to go down much from there. So I look back to 2010, which it was just under 50 million, and we're just over 50 million last year. So we're probably going to see some level of increase in overall vehicle sales. Not to mention when you look at, I don't know if it's a correlation or causation. I think it's causation, but when you look at election years, usually there's general optimism, right? Either no matter which side of the aisle you fall on,
Change is coming, right?
right. or things are going to stay the same and you like them,
Yeah.
right? So one way or the other,
Right. Something good.
Right. You have optimism. So anyway, heading into the election year, we got that going for us. But then also when you look at the mix of new to used, so last year had the highest percentage of basically total vehicle sales. So when you look at new and used combined, the highest percentage of new vehicles making up that total vehicle sales since 2016. So
Yeah.
over 30%.
Which makes a lot of sense because we had inventory for the first time.
Yeah.
And there was the most incentive put on new vehicle interest rates from manufacturers, which were helping the affordability issue, which wasn't able to be helped with rising interest rates on used cars. So it makes sense that new vehicle sales would be at a high last year for sure.
Right. But when you look over time, it's probably not going to stay there, certainly not increase.
Right.
Right. So from a percentage perspective and a unit perspective, we're probably going to see more used vehicles becoming an important part of the dealership's retail strategy, I think in 24.
So also in the report, one of the indicators or one of the assumptions is that the cost of borrowing likely is going to stay high.
Mm-hmm.
You have any more depth on that? I mean, financing and interest rates, huge conversation. Everybody's watching. Is there any more pulled out of the report other than that?
No, I mean, it's really just looking at the way the Fed's acting, right, and where they're putting rates and how they're reluctant to come down. So, I think everybody's prediction has been pretty conservative here recently on what 24 is going to look like as far as rate reductions, if there are any. So when you look at it, cars are expensive. New cars, I don't know what was average price last year, 48 grand or something. It's high, whatever it is, darn near 50 grand.
Yeah.
Which is funny. It's a funny story. I watch this video every now and then, and it's got a clip in it of this Escalade commercial, and it was talking about how an Escalade just hit $50,000. There's no way.
Oh
right?
man,
there's no way.
Can you imagine?
A personal consumer is going to spend 50 grand to put a vehicle in their own driveway. And now it's like
now Escalades are like 120.
Right? That's unbelievable. You got to send us that. That's unreal.
You can get like a Corolla now for 50 or right? That's what it feels like. Let me read a couple more of these points. Kind of going back a little bit to the Conquest. So basically, I just want to make sure people can hear them in case they don't see the report. Overall brand retention, 43.7%. Toyota has the highest retention at 60.1%. No big surprise there. Here's an interesting one. Nissan is a target on every mainstream brand's Conquest list.
Yeah, that shocked me. I don't know. There was just consistency across every brand that Nissan was in the top 5 conquests for.
I mean, I guess, okay. So if I like just quickly try to think through that, Nissan is definitely seen as kind of like not quite like a starting position like a Mitsubishi, like to get into a new car, but Nissan's also like kind of like the quality of vehicles and the appeal that they've started to have with some tech and things they're putting in there definitely moves them a little bit closer to like a transition into Kia, Hyundai, some I don't know, what's another brand that kind of has that little tech kind of feel to it. So I guess it makes sense that like the Nissan buyers coming out of their Nissan, they got that, they made it to the other end, might be a really good bump set into another brand.
Well, and if you look at it, Paul, similar to Toyota, but not with the brand equity of Toyota, is they have one of the widest vehicle lineups.
That's a great point.
Right. So when you look at, and not just that, but from a price point perspective, they have a very, very wide price point.
Yeah.
And so if you look, any OEM essentially can look at a Nissan buyer and find a segment that matches their target audience. So that's where that kind of starts to make sense for me is, a Kia could be seen conquesting sales from them.
Easy.
But also some of the luxury and the Highlines and even sports cars and larger crossover utility vehicles and things like that, like all have segments that they could target from Nissan. So
that's
watch out if you're a Nissan dealer, coming for you.
Well, back to the used car strategy, right?
Yeah, back to
all the way back around we get.
I love it. That's so much fun. Well, hey, at time of recording, we're going to be coming and hanging out with the team at Reynolds at the location. So
yeah, can't wait.
If this has come out afterwards, we might have a couple sneak peeks around the area there in the behind the scenes of what happens down at Reynolds, and anything that we should be watching out for, excited for on the grounds of the Reynolds headquarters.
Sure. I mean, a couple of new things. Well, you turned me down on the workout before you got to get on a plane, so you won't get to see the gym, I guess. But
I was excited to have Kyle. Well, we could go see the gym.
We could see the
Kyle
gym.
doesn't just want to go get all like run 3 miles and then go get in line next to everybody that doesn't want him next to them in line because he just worked out.
No, we'll definitely have to check out. So a couple of things we'll check out. One, our security operations center, our SOC that we built out this year. It's pretty impressive. I think you guys
sounds
like
great
that
already.
And we'll check out we'll actually do, as long as you guys are still up for it, we'll do a podcast recording in person in our studio.
Yeah.
And then got to show off to you guys our video production studio downstairs too. We have a production team here, and they do excellent things, but they have some pretty cool stuff that you guys will probably get a kick out of. So we'll make sure to give the full tour.
Well, you're speaking our love language. I can't wait.
He was like, production, workout. Good. That's perfect.
We'll get a little work done while we're there too. Greg, thank you so much for just being so open-handed with sharing the reports and serving the industry in this way. And always, thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time today.
No, thanks guys. Always fun, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Well, first of all, I can't believe that I forgot that like just a couple days ago I was talking to my father-in-law about the fact that he had worked with Reynolds, and
That's
then for them to
unbelievable.
have done the brand discovery of going back on the logos.
We
and
need to
all
have
the
your
things that happened.
father-in-law on the show.
He's actually
I like the way
another story.
I like the way
he
you
would be
used
great on the story.
actually
He
in
would be
there.
great on the show. But here's the other thing is I first the first thing that I appreciate about this whole podcast is obviously Reynolds has marketing arms and communications and digital retailing and DMS and security and paper and all that type of stuff. But this is completely service. Like, hey, we have access to a whole bunch of data that can serve dealers to make really, really intelligent stocking marketing decisions, no matter what the provider that you is. There's not a clean cut and solution for this. But hey, look, if you're paying attention to where customers are moving from and to what they're buying right now, what they might want to buy over the next year, you can be really, really intelligent with the way you spend your money, the way you stock your inventory, the way you go to market. Just appreciate Reynolds and Greg for bringing that to life within this this conversation.
It's really great. We are going to link the report in the show notes to this so that if you're listening to the show, the link will get you directly to the report so you can check out the full thing. You know, we were only able to cover a fraction of it. Just even what we covered, I feel like is so actionable. Like there's so many things, and that's always the most rewarding thing for us, that if through this collaboration mindset, we can bring a couple people together and even have one thing, right? If we're talking about the Nissan Conquest, or we're talking about the used car allocation on the or the used allocation you have, or the inventory you stock, because you know about who's going to get out of a truck and what percentage is not likely to come back to your brand. I feel like those are things that can just drop in dealers' mind. And now when they're on vAuto, when they're meeting with their GM or their sales managers, they can just drop this little thing and it can affect real change. So I'm always happy when we get to that point.
Always happy. Well, hey, we thank you for joining us on another episode of Auto Collabs. On behalf of Paul J. Daly, myself, and even Michael Cirillo, who shall be back soon. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to Auto Collabs.
Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?